This is ScanCentral DAST here. And the first thing we get when we look at it is we get a queue of what sort of scans have we been running. Now, I've been doing a bunch of really fast, kind of small ones, because one of the features that we're pretty excited about is what's called our fast proxy and some of our API integrations. So what this allows us to do is to reuse something like a functional test. And quite often QA, they develop a large library of functional tests, and those tests are great for automation of the QA work, but it's also something we can take those artifacts and we can start looking at reusing those for the security testing of things. We don't necessarily need to scan the entire application every single time we have a check-in. If we have functional tests, we can do some very targeted scanning and make sure we are doing the security testing of the workflows that are currently under development. So with that, I'd like to give a quick demo of how we would actually go about doing that. And there are a couple ways we can do that. So I'm going to show first how to do something like this in a manual basis. What I have here is, this is something, again, that is intended to be run through some sort of CI/CD pipeline. But because the tooling is flexible, we can use this for doing manual testing as well. So I'm going to kind of give a quick demo of how we would do that. What I've done is I've told our proxy that this is something we'd stand up. It's a very lightweight proxy. You'd have something like your Jenkins would stand this up, take your functional tests, and run it through it. So without the proxy running, I can't get to here, but when it's running, we can see that we're starting to capture some of that traffic. Maybe all I'm doing right now is I'm testing the login page. So I've captured what I need to for that login. Now, this is something, because we're doing it in a manual step and I've got my one command line occupied with that, I can run another one and it'll actually stop that proxy for me. And we can see it's queued this up for a scan. It may take a second here, but yeah. You can see this is that scan I ran, and it's going to run a very quick scan. It's just going to capture that login information and get us results of that. And this, to me, is one of the key pieces about shifting left. Dynamic scans have a bit of a reputation of taking a long time to do. Well, if you're doing a stage gate approach where the application is ready to go and you've got to scan the entire application, then yeah, there's a lot involved. We need to crawl the application. We need to run hundreds of checks against every single parameter. If you've got 100 parameters and 100 checks, it takes a second or so per check. You can quickly see this is a time-intensive thing. However, when we start looking at shifting things left, we can actually start looking at the development processes and what is our QA and our developers doing. They're not writing the entire application at once. What they're doing is they're writing pieces of it, typically a feature or some sort of user story. And there are things like, as I can show, functional tests around those are particularly, we can do manual tests. By the way, this could be a phone that I could have pointed at this. This could have been an API. We may not even have UI set up yet, but there's an API that we can, funnel traffic from into this, and we can start testing those sort of things very early. It doesn't have to take a long time. The scan is already complete, and I found 5 criticals, 12 highs, and the time it took to explain what I was doing. So not only does shifting left enable our developers to see results sooner, we mitigate that time intensive. We've got to scan the entire app. I just validated the security posture of the login page of a known vulnerable app, and it took me between bringing up a couple command lines and running the test, it took a couple minutes. So that's one of the big benefits of the concept. But we can also do things like this in an automated fashion, and I want to show that. So I'm comfortable writing things in Python. I also have some here in PowerShell. This is an example, though, that I'm going to show of doing a very similar type test, but this is actually going to be a Selenium script that I have a Python script. This is something you could actually take from QA, from whoever is doing this sort of automated testing, and you just added 2 to 3 additional lines to the script, and suddenly you have what is an automation script, and it becomes a security test. What this did, it started that same fast proxy. It made sure everything was set up and listening. Then we took that same Selenium script that is actually written in Python. It ran it through the proxy, it shut everything down, and we queued up another scan. Again, something we can do in a DevOps pipeline, we can do it in a build pipeline, reuse of the things we already have in small bite-sized chunks, so that, again, the results of this, I don't give a developer, this 100-page PDF of vulnerabilities and say, hey, we've got to fix all the critical and highs, which we all know that's the priority. So, go to it, make sure it's all cleaned up. I've been that person where I was given, we've got to take care of this. Well, if I had been working on a feature and my QA could have taken their automation scripts, run those from a security perspective and said, hey, that feature working on, or that feature you finished a week ago, here are 5 vulnerabilities that I found on it while you're working on it. That's a game changer to me, that really, while the developer is in the mindset, the developer is thinking about things, they can take it and they can run with it. And just to show one more way we can do that sort of similar thing, we can also do this thing. Everything is available, again, through the API. We have an extensive API for ScanCentral. Everything, what we do when we add features to ScanCentral is actually we create an API endpoint for it. Then we look at creating UI. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. Sometimes it is really more of a DevOps type feature where we would think of it that way. So there may not even be UI for some of it. Some of these things are endpoints that I talk to customers and they're like, I think this was used by your Azure DevOps or the Jenkins plugin, but I ended up using it because I already had a plugin that I was using and we just had it use that. So this is another one where we can queue up a known scan, run it from a PowerShell script. And I can actually share real quick. We have these are very simple scripts. This is the entire thing to kick off the PowerShell script of how to queue up a scan, how to get it integrated. This is not something you're going to need a developer to do. And these sort of toolings it's right in the DevOps wheelhouse to accomplish these sort of things. And then, again, the Selenium style script, this is something that QA is an expert at this point. There's been a big trend in the QA industry is that we have kind of a distinction between junior and senior QA that I'm seeing a lot, where the junior QA they're excellent at the manual testing. They're getting on board, they're learning how to do things. But then everyone quite often really wants to kind of elevate themselves to a more senior QA level person. And those are going to be your automation experts. This is something they can take, expand both their knowledge, their professional expertise, things like that, and incorporate security testing in. And I actually find there's quite often a lot of excitement when we say, take your existing functional tests, and now not only are you testing the acceptance of the application, you're testing it from a security posture as well. With that, I'm going to do a quick overview of some of the features that we do have in ScanCentral, just to show what we can do. This is that first one that I ran, that manual one. We can see it took about a minute between getting it stood up, getting it started. Pretty quick scan. We did find some vulnerabilities. As I said, we also, when we set up a scan, we can set up prioritization. So ScanCentral, you can have a pool of sensors. These are the actual, the workers who are going to go and do the scanning for you. In this case, for my demo, I've got 2 of them. But depending on your needs, we have customers who are scanning 1,000 apps a week. That is not an unusual thing now. The majority of those are probably going to be these short 5-minute scans, things like that. But based on prioritization, we can also start incorporating those long-running scans, and we can also pool these sensors. Now, because I only have 2, I only have a single pool where everything goes into. But we can start thinking about, okay, if I have long-running scans, they may need to go here. Or I have critical apps. These are going to be high priority. They may have a dedicated pool of 5 sensors, something like that, where we can really make sure, based on priority, things get done. And then we have those continuous scans that need to be run maybe once a quarter for compliance reasons, for acceptance reasons, those sort of things. Those can actually be put at a lower priority and allowed to just run during that quarter, during that month, whatever that may be, when there's availability. So now it's no longer, we have to either prioritize or deprioritize things. It actually all gets managed for us. We can always view settings. These are useful things to use and reuse. We can always schedule things as well. I mentioned deny intervals. This is something that we can do for, let's say, maintenance reasons, or maybe we have a production app that it's primarily being used in the US, but we need to do some regular non-injection tile attacks, but more environmental checks against to make sure things. Quite often, even in production, we have customers who are doing things like testing SSL posture and things like that. But you don't want that test running when your customers are using it. If it's a US app, we can go ahead and say, hey, between 8 a.m., 10 p.m., this app is not available. It gets paused and resumed at a time when it's more convenient. And then, of course, you don't want to test apps that aren't up and running. If you know there's a maintenance window, if you know you've got an application that maybe over Christmas, that's a very popular time, Christmas, Thanksgiving, there's a lot of IT refresh. We have many a customer who they'll just put a deny interval and say, okay, during this window, I don't know what's up, what's down, we're not running scans. Or it could be the opposite. It could be that's when you run all your high priority scans. It really it depends on your environment, but we try to enable you either way. Then, of course, you need various policies and base settings, which is a way of sort of collecting the common use cases you're going to have. But the big one, though, that I want to leave with is this is something that we no longer have to think of. Dynamic testing as something that is, a big chunk of time. Even my long ones, if you're familiar with WebGoat, which is a popular secure vulnerable app, we're running these depending on the tests we're running in 15 to 40 minutes. But one of the nice things to do is to really get use out of that functional tests and enable both development, QA, DevOps to reuse what they've already created.